presenter from Azerbaijan, Bilgeis Khajiyeva. Let me introduce our presenter, Bilgeis.
Good morning one more time, everyone. I'm Bilgeis Khajiyeva from Azerbaijan. I'm an English language teacher and teacher trainer, a U.S. Department of State Open Alumni 2024, and I'm a representative of STEP Azerbaijan. It's a pleasure to join you today and represent Azerbaijan and our STEP Azerbaijan at this international conference. And much of my work focuses on inclusive teaching, emotional well-being, and learner participation. I have worked with mixed level groups, visually impaired learners, and students who need additional support with reading, attention, and confidence or communication. Today, I would like to explore practical questions. So how can technology and AI help us respond to learner differences without creating a separate lesson plan for every student, separately? Our learners may be in the same classroom, but use the same coursebook and work towards the same learning objectives. However, they do not all begin from the same starting point. For example, one learner may understand a written text but hesitate to speak. Another may communicate confidently but struggle with spelling. So now, what I do, before adapting a classroom activity, I usually ask myself 3 questions. So the first question is about readiness. What can the learner do independently now, and where is support needed? So for this, of course, we need to know our class very well. We need to use evidence from classroom observation, learner performance, and assessment. We should not make assumptions based only on labels. The second question is about access. What barriers is preventing participation? The barrier may be the learner's language level, as it was mentioned, but it may also be small print or crowded page, unclear instruction, limited background knowledge, speed, anxiety, or inaccessible response format. The third question is about expression. How can the learner demonstrate the same learning? Sometimes we confuse difficulty with inability because we allow learners only one way to respond. For example, imagine that the objective is to use target vocabulary accurately. One learner might demonstrate this through a paragraph. Another might record an audio response. Differentiated instruction is sometimes misunderstood. It does not mean preparing 30 completely different lessons like for 30 students. That would be really unrealistic and, of course, unnecessary. It also does not mean lowering expectations, like giving easy work to learners who need support. Differentiation means responsive planning. So the teacher uses evidence about learners' readiness, interests, needs, and then adjusts how learners access and practice or demonstrate learning. For example, Carol Ann Tomlinson identifies 4 areas that teachers can differentiate. The first one is content. So what learners work with. The second is process, how they engage with and understand the material. The third is product, how they demonstrate their learning. And the first is environment, the physical and emotional conditions in which learning takes place. So instead of asking, how can I fix this learner? We can ask, for example, which part of my task creates a barrier and what alternative can preserve the challenge. So now let's talk about how we can use technology to help us remove barriers. Technology can help us provide timely feedback, but specific and level appropriate. However, as teachers, we must review the accuracy tone and usefulness of the feedback. These functions do not always require an expensive or complicated platforms, like we have different AI tools you already know, like Grammarly, Cloudy, Gemini, or ChatGPT, and many others. So Killbot, for example, is one of another examples, which means that differentiation must always remain aligned with the objective. So the support may change, but the learning goal should remain the same. I use simple 3-step workflow when working with it. The first step is defining. Before opening an AI tool, I identify the learning objective, the learner profile, the specific barrier, and the elements that must not change. The third step is reviewing. So we, as a teacher, we must check factual accuracy, language level. Of course, here cultural relevance is also important. Accessibility bias. For example, like UNESCO recommends a human-centered approach to generate AI in education. This means that professional judgment cannot be outsourced. We should never upload confidential learner information. What does it mean? Like their names, their age, surname. Instead of using their name or diagnosis, we can write, for example, a B1 learner who benefits from short instructions and audio support. This example is connected to my own experience working with visually impaired learners. For example, a worksheet may look attractive but still inaccessible if meaning depends on images, small text, color cues, or complicated layout. A visually impaired learner may not be able to work independently. The first response should not be to reduce the language level. The barrier is access, not ability. So it's really important to see if the barriers is specific. And when writing adaptation, so you need to think if it's practical or not. And of course, when we check, we need to be sure whether it maintains the original objective or not. Maybe this one more example about writing. Let's say barrier is difficulty organizing ideas. As an adaptation, we can provide a visual organizer and sentence starters for certain students. So here the goal is the same, writing a structured opinion paragraph. So the learner still writes the paragraph. The support helps with the planning and organization. So the third one is privacy. So like names, diagnosis, photographs, assessment records, or other identifiable information should not be put into public AI systems. It is really risky. Over time, these adapted materials will become part of your regular teaching resources, so differentiation becomes more manageable. So AI may accelerate the first draft, but reflective teaching makes the adaptation effective. As to finalize my presentation, what we need to say, I would like to leave you with 3 final ideas. First, keep the goal. Inclusive differentiation should preserve meaningful learning and high expectation. Second, remove the barrier. Look careful at the task, format, pace, environment, and response mode before assuming that the problem belongs to the learner. Third, expand the road. Use technology and AI to provide access, like meaningful choice, useful feedback. In my own teaching, the most important change has not been a particular application. It has been learning to ask better questions about participation. Who can enter this task independently? Who remains invisible? What small change would allow that learner to contribute? So here, like technology serves as access. AI supports our design. However, we create the conditions in which learner can feel safe, challenged, and seen. So thank you very much for your attention, and I welcome your questions. I would also be happy to hear about one adaptation you are planning to try. I'm really grateful for this, opportunity to share my knowledge, and thank you for really for the listeners for joining this conference today.